you really get into that house, if there's a family and kids and teenagers, there's a lot of different surfaces for media to come into people's attention and behaviors and habits. And there's a lot going on in every home. So think about all those data points and how difficult it is to wrangle. So, in my dream world, would have a better way of measuring attention and eye tracking, not just on one screen, but across many screens.
Hello, my name is Adam and I'm a CEO of Real Eye. We are here today with Sasha McCune. Sasha heads CMB's media entertainment and culture practice with over 14 years of experience in insights and research, collaborating with industry giants like Hulu, Disney, and Google. A graduate of Drexel University in design, she's an active contributor to the Insight Association and Women in Research. Hello, Sasha. How are you today?
Hi, Adam. Nice to see you.
Super nice to see you too. I'm really happy that we had this opportunity to speak with you today. So, Sasha, tell me a little bit more about the new era of innovation and what does it mean for the media, entertainment, and the culture industry?
Yeah, so a big part of my role is working at the intersection of media, entertainment, and also culture, which my whole career has been about human-centered design, complex people problems, and making sense of the very chaotic world that we live in that is always changing and growing. And interestingly, the last few years in particular, pandemic on, has brought a lot of chaos and change. I'm sure that's not new news to anybody, but even still, at this point, 2024, 2025 and on, we're really in this kind of relentlessly chaotic era of innovation, right? So in my past role, I spent a lot of time studying innovation and running innovation programs. And there's a lot of ways people talk about innovation: transformational, open innovation, incremental innovation, right? There's so many ways of talking about it. But in the media and tech landscape in particular, and even market research and the state of research right now, we're really mid-flight in a very disruptive, breakthrough chaos era, right? Have you been perhaps watching the TV show Three Body Problems, which is going viral right now on Netflix?
Not yet, therefore I'm aware about the three body, even end body issue, end body problem. So
yes. Yeah, no, I just think it's so fitting that this show is coming to the world right now. The premise of the show is, I don't want to ruin too much, but the premise of the show is all about instability of realms in a chaos era. And I just see it as so close to home when you think about how chaotic and unpredictable a lot of landscapes are right now: media, entertainment, technology, research, AI. The whole consumer ecosystem is experiencing a lot of disruption.
Interesting. So is there any solution to handle all this chaos, market research, measurements, entertainment, media, or this is just like a put yourself in the middle of it and see what's happening, try to solve the puzzles on the go?
Yeah, I mean, if we learned anything through the last 5 years, we learned you have to lean into adaptation and change in order to survive, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that you've probably experienced some version of that as well. So I think that we have to become more comfortable with the fact that not just AI, but also other things happening in the broader landscape is completely changing the fundamentals of research, of media, of value chains, of user experiences. So as those fundamentals are challenged, we have to do our work differently. We have to ask questions differently, and you think about what we're measuring and why, and change the way we're measuring that across screens and experiences. So there's a lot of change happening on all fronts. It's both change management and also experimentation, trial and error, questioning things that were long-standing methods or traditions. Looking at them and going, is this still the right way? Is this still the best way to measure this problem or to study this problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Recently, I had a similar conversation with Carrie from 10K Humans, and she was referring, like we did several steps forward to online, like measuring, doing market research online with online panelists, online panel providers. Therefore, she's questioning that there's so much of fraud in online measurements, online market research, that perhaps sometimes it's a good idea to take a step back and see whether the methods that we evolved so quickly are the right ones.
Yeah, no, and increasingly in this day and age, you cannot rely on one method alone, or you'll find yourself making critical errors. And this is a big part of, what CMB believes at our heart as well. We really believe in custom and bespoke and leveraging mixed methods to answer problems the right way. So whether that's using a mix of advanced analytics and market strategy and consumer psychology and qualitative and advanced AI, bringing that into our world, we're kind of constantly juggling these multiple parts in the kit in order to make sure we're answering questions smartly and looking at the whole picture and the whole context.
I see. And Sasha, can you tell me a little bit more about Qual-At-Scale? Is it somehow connected to what you were referring to right now? And does it help to leverage the AI like in the responsible ways of being an input in such a crazy world when there's so many inputs?
Yeah, I think that, well, the Qual-At-Scale is an interesting integration of these methods we just talked about, right? The idea that our work needs to become more custom, more multifaceted in this world that's constantly changing is certainly true. But in the past, there was definitely a mindset of there's what you can do qualitatively and there's what you can do quantitatively, and they kind of almost exist in their own worlds. They run sometimes they're being run by different teams. They don't always talk to one another. And at CMB, we've really been trying to look ahead at where the research industry is going and what clients need and what they're trying to uncover. And we're trying to break down the walls between quant and qual and think more about the integration and the marriage of these methods together. And mixed methods is nothing new, but when we talk about Qual-At-Scale, what we really mean here at CMB is we're trying to bring our best quantitative and qualitative minds together to craft research solutions that can be more scalable so that the qualitative data can give you more of that why and context without making a lot of sacrifices in duration, investment, and even sample size, while also still retaining some of the quantitative best practices and the advanced analytics that we need in order to look at problems in different ways. So that's kind of how we've been thinking about it and talking about it. And we're building tools and programs that are very new. They feel very new. Some of it's not always leveraging new technology, but it's leveraging different components in programs and experimenting with new features within existing technology to get those programs to the point where they feel more scalable. And so I like to think of it as almost like a 1-2 punch of how do we use our toolkit as researchers and think about contextual complexity and design programs that can match that from measuring things in a few different ways.
I see. That's very interesting that you're mentioning that there's this wall between qual and quant. It's not the first time I hear that this approach is not the most, let's say, valid one. And I've observed that some companies are ruining the wall between these two, let's say, even departments. Like perhaps that's also a place where companies should take the step back and not push qual quant, but rather aggregate it into one single, let's say, research center. Qual-At-Scale. I really like the naming, by the way. That represents...
I can't take credit. Thank you, Richard and Casey on my team and others. It's a joint effort as we work together to bring these skills into teams and into programs in creative ways. CMB was based on the history of quantitative rigor and excellence and advanced analytics, which has been a great place to start from. But we also know in some of these problems, especially in the media and entertainment space and technology, you can't rely on surveys alone to give you your answers, because if you ask explicit questions of users, what they say versus what they do reveals some pretty big gaps and problems. So the say do gap is very real, and our clients are pretty smart about that. So they know you can't just ask explicitly, what did you pay attention to? Let's use the eye tracking as a case study for this. You can't ask them explicitly. You do sometimes want to ask them explicitly, but that can't be your only data point.
Yeah.
You also want other data points to understand the points of distraction. When do their assumptions about their own behavior fall apart? Or what areas do we need to look into as aspirational cues? A lot of times what people self-report, while some people think, oh, they're lying, they're misrepresenting, or, they're just not very
Of
honest with
course.
themselves, a lot of times users are just aspirational. So that there's an aspirational sense of wanting to do something, and that's what you say you're going to do. But in the actual behavior, in the moment, that might fall apart. And we might see that in eye tracking, in behavioral data, in qualitative data, when we dig deep into mental models and psychology. That's when we start to often see explicit data points come apart, and we need to kind of understand the levers of why something might not always be as straightforward as it might seem.
Yeah, that's the interesting part.
Yeah.
And I totally confirm that. From what I know, that there could be a huge gap between what people think or what people declare. Yeah, very cool. And Sasha, what about the attention economy? Can you elaborate a bit more about that? Perhaps how you measure it? Are you using any, like you mentioned previously, eye tracking for it?
Yeah.
That's a pretty interesting topic for me personally.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. The attention economy is a fascinating space. I'm sure you and I are going to get going on this for sure. One thing just to start is a lot of my work is in media and entertainment. As I said, I also touch tech and other categories where consumer bandwidth and mental models is on the table and something we're paying a lot of attention to. But in the media and entertainment space, it is a entire category that has made their money based on monetizing attention and engagement, right? So that is their bread and butter. That is how their business models work, and that's how the money flows. But given that equation, there's a problem in the attention scarcity that users have right now. We are now at a point where we're saturated. Users don't have any more attention to give, right? I love this study that Dr. Gloria Mark from University of California, Irvine did. Her team has been measuring attention in the media and information space for many years. And I think the data that I recall is in 2004, they were measuring an average attention time of 2.5 minutes, right? So the landscape in 2004, we barely had flip phones. Tech hadn't proliferated much beyond the internet. And although there was a lot of change and excitement and innovation happening, we lived in a very different world than we do today, if you sort of start to look back and think about it. A few years later, they saw that attention span get cut to, I think it was in half, maybe 75 seconds. And then in 2023, they've recently done new research saying that attention to one screen is now less than 50 seconds. So that is just going down and down and down. And in the media landscape, it's not just one screen. You have computers, you have tablets, you have TV screens, you have so many layers happening on media that how can you possibly hold someone's attention and capture that attention and measure that attention effectively?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I've been recently asked a question, like, when was the last time you recall you watched the entire video advertisement, for instance, or something like that? It's not happening anymore. There is also a very interesting research happening on Stanford. We had a pleasure to interview Professor Byron Reeves, and they are recording years of people using their smartphones. They're taking like screenshots of how people are interacting with their smartphones. Of course, the people are, and like participants are aware of it. But Byron said that they had so many data points because within even 1 minute of using smartphone, people are already, yeah, you can imagine doing
That's
more than 10 things at once. And I can totally correlate. And
yeah,
that's today's world.
100%. And just like I like to use the word me search sometimes when I'm relying on my own
What's
personal
the word?
experience.
Sorry?
Me search, like
Okay.
instead of research, right? But I'm thinking about what I was doing last night. I was trying to get through an episode of Grey's Anatomy, and I kept watching 5 minutes of it, pausing, walking away, cooking dinner, answering an email, coming back, turning it on. And I only got 15 minutes into the episode and it took 2 hours. And I was totally fine with that. But I was just laughing at myself
Yeah.
about all of the different ways that my own attention is getting pulled away from me and how much that's magnified in households. You might have some homes with 20 screens. If you really get into that house, if there's a family and kids and teenagers, there's a lot of different surfaces for media to come into people's attention and behaviors and habits. And there's a lot going on in every home. So I'll think about all those data points and how difficult it is to wrangle. So, in my dream world, would have a better way of measuring attention and eye tracking, not just on one screen, but across many screens, because that's the reality. Just think about sports fans. If you've ever done any work on sports in the US, it is really common for heavy sports fans to not just be viewing on one screen. They might actually be viewing on 6 or 8 that they've set up in their own living room. People will take single screens and turn them into 4-screen setups, do that a few times. They're tracking multiple games. They're tracking stats on their phone. They're having conversations with their friends on social media, and they're tracking commentary on ESPN and other platforms. So that's just 1 or 2 hours in an American household for a sports fan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Doing me search, I can definitely correlate that I enjoy going to the cinema since I have to place my phone down and I'm totally sucked by the movie, and it's totally different experience than doing it at home. And at home, I'm throwing my phone away if I want to see a movie from start to the end. Oh well, and that's just like you said. It's putting a research on top of that. It's a hard thing to do, definitely.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of creativity and ingenuity and building programs that include a mix of tools, eye tracking, dial tests, and observation, Qual-At-Scale techniques. This is the challenge that we're in, is one method isn't enough to capture all of these layers and to make sense of it. And you have to kind of be prepared to use all the tools in your toolkit. And then don't even get me started on how we're going to measure attention in a world where immersive media becomes more the norm. I'm thinking mixed reality, AR, VR. That's a whole new landscape that I have yet to really map my head around as to when it will actually become truly more mainstream. It's still not. But what will that do to our media ecosystem and landscape? Another person who does really great work in the attention economy space is Doug Shapiro. He's been writing and publishing some work recently on the problems in the media and entertainment landscape in terms of the value chain changing. So he's been talking a lot about the impact of user-generated content on the media landscape. And I think I saw that you have a background in some user-generated content space. So, it's not just that the studios, the TV studios, the big media brands, they're not the only ones creating content now to compete with. It's also right. Users who are flooding TikTok and flooding YouTube and creating their own narratives and stories. And that's going to be changing and putting pressure on research teams in terms of methodology and where we need to focus and what type of data we need to gather. But it's putting a lot of pressure on these big businesses as well.
Yep. One more question here. And how do you see the eye tracking as a methodology, as a methodology, not a technology, that supports these measurements? Is it something that is going to grow, that need for eye tracking will evolve? Are you using a lot of it in your everyday research?
Yeah, I want to be using more of it, and I want to find ways to better integrate it into other tools that we have. Because as I was mentioning, one of the challenges we have is we have to take multiple methods in mind
Mm-hmm.
when we're studying these problems. So I see eye tracking and dial tests and some of those more media rich data points as things we need to incorporate into our broader programs. So it's almost like a part of the whole that I want to see packaged into experiences and
I see.
engagements. And that, because we want to see that and we want to see other ways that people are engaging with content. So that becomes the trick of how do we knit together these methodologies into cohesive research programs that we can look at things from different perspectives in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. So last question.
Yeah.
Any advice for those who are starting their careers in research?
Oh, that's a fun one. So my career has definitely been untraditional, and in many ways, I actually started in research by way of design, which is a
Mhm.
very untraditional way of coming into the category.
You
But
studied design, right? Mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
I studied design, but it was design in the world where human-centered design had not yet become a practice. So when
mhm.
I was studying design, I was really studying human-centered design, information design. My world was all about complexity of people, and I was bringing in elements of psychology into my work, even in undergrad. And I was very fortunate to follow a path where I got a lot of training as an applied anthropologist. I was working at the intersection of innovation and business strategy and storytelling and data visualization. So, I let my curiosity lead me in my career. And I think that's really important for people is to focus more on what's interesting, where there are big problems and changes happening in the market and the landscape, and find ways to fall in love with
Mm.
that problem and the curiosity that you need to persist through those challenges and changes will keep you motivated and fueled in your career.
That's it for today. Thanks for having this little conversation with me.
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
really excited for your world. If you can build me something that helps me measure across screens, you'd be my hero. So,
that's our plan. Thanks again, Sasha.
yeah, thank
So
you.
have a good rest of the day, and
Yeah,
bye bye.
bye.
Okay, I'm stopping.